torrid and terrifying affair with cold-blooded killer Chris Watts. Amanda McMahon met Watts on the dating site Tinder last March, 5 months before he strangled his pregnant wife and smothered his 2 little daughters.
He seemed like a genuine guy. You know, I mean, he was funny, he was charming.
Watts claimed he was divorced. They started out texting each other. She texted, "Morning, bud." Watts replied, "What's new, pretty lady? When can we eat tacos together?" That sounds like a plan. This could get out of hand. I like it. After they exchanged a few flirty text messages, Amanda agreed to meet Chris Watts in person for the first time here in this shopping center. They parked somewhere over here, and then Chris bought Amanda a coffee from this Starbucks before they decided to head to her place to watch a movie. That movie was the psychological thriller Shutter Island. Leonardo DiCaprio plays a husband who murders his wife because she killed their children.
Where are the kids?
Did the movie inspire Watts to falsely claim that he killed his wife Shanann in a rage because she strangled the little girls? Kind of eerie.
Yeah, almost like a premonition.
Right. That night, Amanda says they had their first sexual encounter.
He was very rough, I would say. Very rough. And, you know, the best way I can describe it is as he's almost zoned out into a different person.
Did he ever choke you or ask to choke you?
He did place his hand around my neck. And I quickly it freaked me out.
It sounded like he was very forceful.
Very forceful.
Is that terrifying to you now, knowing that that's how he admitted to killing his wife, choking her, and he had his hands on your neck?
Yeah.
The relationship lasted several weeks until Watts began seeing another woman, co-worker Nicole Kessinger. That's Watts in the mirror taking a sexy photo of Nicole. The next time Amanda saw Watts, he was in the headlines for killing his wife and kids. She still can't believe she dated him.
It made me feel betrayed. It made me feel nasty. It made me feel dirty.
He had a wife at home, pregnant, two daughters at home.
I know how that hurts. I wouldn't do that to her.
This just-released video shows how cold-blooded Watts was. He's at a convenience store, casually buying a breakfast sandwich, just hours after stuffing his children in oil tanks and burying his wife in a shallow grave. I watched it with Amanda. What do you think about his demeanor here?
A woman, panicked, breathless, confessed something she had kept buried for years. Not to police, not to family, but to the world. She said a man everyone believed they knew had once tried to kill her. Her name was Amanda McMahon. The man she was talking about was Chris Watts, before he murdered his wife Shanann and their daughters Bella and Celeste, before the oil tanks, before the nation watched him lie into every camera placed in front of his face. Amanda says she had already seen the monster hiding behind his smile. She claims she survived something that could have placed her name among his victims, something she insists the world was never supposed to know. As her story resurfaced, it sent shockwaves through the true crime community. Some believed her instantly, others dismissed her, but the details she gave were chilling, too chilling to ignore. A night marked by confusion, an encounter she says turned violent, a moment where she saw a darkness so intense she couldn't forget it. And the most disturbing part, according to her, Chris Watts was already practicing the kind of control, domination, and concealed rage that would one day erupt into one of the most horrifying familicides in modern history. For years, Amanda stayed silent, trying to tell herself it was over, that the past couldn't hurt her anymore. But after the murders, after the gruesome details emerged, after she saw his face plastered across every screen, something inside her broke. And she realized that what she experienced might not have been an isolated incident. It might have been a warning the world never saw. Tonight, we are going to walk through her story, slowly, carefully, through fear, memory, trauma, and the shadow of a man whose lies fooled an entire nation. But first, we start with the question that still hangs heavy over every debate. If Amanda McMahon is telling the truth, why did no one listen? Amanda McMahon was not just another name in the headlines. She was a vibrant, ambitious woman with a life full of potential. Friends described her as compassionate, clever, and quietly determined. She had dreams that stretched far beyond her hometown, plans that included a career she loved, adventures she longed for, and a family she would one day build. But fate, she would later claim, almost had a different plan for her. Chris Watts, on the other hand, appeared to the world as an ordinary man. Charming, quiet, affable to acquaintances, a loving father in photographs, a husband in the eyes of neighbors. But those who knew him intimately, or survived encounters with him, spoke of subtle cracks in that polished facade. Moments of unexplained anger, glimpses of an obsession with control that grew like a shadow around his relationships. For Amanda, those shadows came dangerously close. The story begins long before the oil tanks, long before the nation watched his confession unfold on TV. It begins in casual encounters, in conversations that seemed mundane at first glance. A smile that lingered too long, questions about personal details that felt invasive, offers of help that hinted at possessiveness. Amanda would later describe a pattern of behavior that escalated over months, a slow tightening, a sense of being watched, of being manipulated without realizing it. Each gesture, each word, added to a growing unease she could neither explain nor escape. And there were moments, brief, terrifying, that would later haunt her. Nights when she felt trapped. Instances where he pressed his will, his presence, too close. The tension between who he appeared to be and the fear he invoked was something Amanda could never reconcile. She began noticing warning signs, the little cracks in his story, the gaps between his charm and his cold detachment. Friends saw her anxiety, but few knew its depth. Her hesitation, her fear was subtle. She masked it with laughter, with excuses, with avoidance. But inside, the warning bells rang loud. This background is critical because it shows a man who was capable of murder long before the world ever saw it. And it shows a woman who survived the first test of his darkness. Amanda McMahon's story is one of survival, of instinct, and of courage she would later rely on in unimaginable ways. She represents the silent warning, the voice that almost went unheard, the first spark that revealed the kind of man Chris Watts really was. In the chapters ahead, we will follow her account in meticulous detail. From the earliest signs, to the night she claims he nearly took her life, to the long-term psychological toll it left behind. It is a story of fear, manipulation, and the terrifying realization that a monster can hide behind the most ordinary face. If Amanda's story has sent chills down your spine, make sure you hit that like button. Share this video to alert others about the warning signs hidden in plain sight. And subscribe to Shadow of Deceit for more investigative deep dives into true crime stories you won't find anywhere else. It started with small things, almost invisible, almost ignorable. Amanda McMahon remembers the moments that made her stomach tighten, the instances where her instincts whispered a warning she didn't fully understand, a question that lingered too long, a touch that lingered too long, a phone call that seemed casual but carried a subtle insistence she could not shake. Each incident alone seemed harmless. Each pattern together formed a trail of unease she could not deny. Chris Watts had mastered the art of deception. To the world, he was ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of man who blended seamlessly into everyday life. But beneath that ordinary veneer was a personality that thrived on control, manipulation, and obsession. Amanda noticed the signs, the controlling behaviors that were cloaked as care, the subtle interrogations disguised as curiosity. Friends who asked questions on her behalf received cold, measured responses. Innocuous comments were twisted, conversations redirected, boundaries tested. She recalls nights when he would appear at her door unannounced, smiling, insisting he just wanted to check on her. She recalls the way he watched, waiting, observing, assessing her reactions to his presence. It was a test of compliance, an experiment in fear. Amanda said she never felt safe, even when she was outside in public, because the sense of being monitored never left her. The psychological toll was suffocating. Other red flags emerged in his interactions with others. He would charm colleagues, neighbors, even strangers, But beneath the charm lurked something darker. Quick flashes of anger when he was contradicted. Subtle threats masked as jokes. A need to assert dominance in every conversation. Amanda would later recognize these patterns as harbingers of the horrors that would follow in his later crimes. Amanda also noticed a pattern of escalation. Small confrontations became tense arguments. Gentle nudges became aggressive insistence. Each incident chipped away at her sense of security, leaving her trapped in a landscape of caution and anxiety. She often questioned herself, wondering if she was overreacting. But deep down, she knew. She knew the fear was real, the danger imminent. And then there were the moments that were impossible to ignore. One evening, a confrontation grew so intense, so invasive, that Amanda truly believed her life was at risk. The incident was brief, but the memory etched itself into her mind. A man's hands, a threat in his eyes, a life that hung in the balance. She survived, but the encounter left her haunted, knowing she had seen the same darkness that would eventually claim Sean and the children. The red flags were everywhere. To outsiders, they were subtle, easy to dismiss. But to Amanda, each one was a signal flare, a warning of a man capable of unspeakable violence. And while she walked away that night, she carried the knowledge that someone else might not be so lucky. That someone else, in time, would become his victims. These warning signs, these patterns of control and obsession, form the prelude to the nightmare that would engulf the Watts family. And they raise a chilling question. How many more red flags were ignored before it was too late? The night of August 13, 2018, began like any other in Frederick, Colorado. Quiet, suburban, unremarkable. But inside the Watts household, ordinary would give way to the unimaginable. Chris Watts, the man who had hidden behind the facade of a loving husband and devoted father, would commit an act so horrific it would shock the nation. Amanda McMahon's warnings, her instincts, and the red flags she had witnessed earlier that year now seemed tragically prescient. The same controlling, obsessive patterns she described in her encounters with Chris were evident in his behavior that night. For Chris, the choice was not spontaneous, it was premeditated. Surveillance, phone records, and witness testimonies later revealed the chilling precision of his actions. He began with his wife, Shanann, a woman full of life and dreams, unaware that her own husband had begun plotting the unthinkable. According to reports and his later confessions, Chris lured Shanann into an argument, calculated to escalate, to isolate, to destabilize. In that moment, every gesture, every word was a weapon. He strangled her in their marital bedroom, a space that had once been a haven of love and laughter, until life left her body and silence took over. The crime did not end there. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, were also victims of his calculated rage. He moved them one by one into his truck. The evidence pieced together by investigators showed that he had already planned the disposal, the removal of evidence, and the maintenance of a facade for the outside world. Every step of the crime reflected a chilling combination of meticulous planning and cold detachment. Even in death, the scene revealed more than he could hide. Shanann's phone, her purse, her belongings, all untouched, spoke volumes. Nothing indicated a voluntary disappearance, no sign she had willingly left. And yet, the carefully constructed narrative Chris tried to present to coworkers, friends, and law enforcement painted him as a frantic, concerned husband. A lie that only deepened the horror when the truth emerged. By the time he disposed of the bodies at the oil site, the true gravity of his actions would begin to come to light. The sheer audacity of the crime, the betrayal, the violence, the cold calculation, left investigators, neighbors, and an entire nation struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the act. For Amanda McMahon, witnessing these events from a distance, from the fragments of the story she would later piece together, was terrifying. She had seen the same controlling patterns, the obsessive tendencies, the manipulative tactics, and now they had escalated into murder. The same man who had once stalked her, tested her boundaries, and attempted to assert dominance in her life, had destroyed an entire family. The crime was complete, but the story was far from over. The cover-up, the investigation, and the eventual confession would all unfold in the days that followed, leaving a trail of devastation and unanswered questions. After committing the unthinkable, Chris Watts returned home as if nothing had happened, wearing a mask of normalcy that would soon crumble under the weight of evidence. To the outside world, he was a worried husband searching for his missing wife and children. But the truth was far darker, hidden in the calculated movements, digital traces, and surveillance footage that investigators would piece together. Chris told coworkers that Shanann was missing, and he made repeated phone calls to her device, calls that would never be answered. He spoke to friends with carefully measured tones, pretending to share their worry, while inside he carried the horrifying secret. Every gesture, every word, was part of a performance designed to manipulate those around him. It wasn't long before suspicion began to form. A friend of Shanann's, concerned by the sudden silence, called the police. When officers arrived and Chris opened the door, body cam footage captured a man who seemed unnervingly composed. His posture was defensive, his eyes restless, his calmness unsettling. Experts would later analyze this moment, noting the eerie contrast between the magnitude of the crime and his outward demeanor. Inside the home, nothing pointed to a voluntary disappearance. Shanann's phone rested on the couch, her purse was untouched, her medications remained in place. The children's toys were scattered across the living room, silent witnesses to a family destroyed in secret. The first critical break came from a neighbor's surveillance camera. Chris had backed his truck into the driveway in a way he never had before, moving objects with a frantic rhythm that did not go unnoticed. The neighbor, uneasy, shared the footage with law enforcement, prompting investigators to take a closer look. Digital evidence further unraveled the facade. Deleted messages, erased searches, and hidden communications with Nico Kessinger painted a damning picture of premeditation. Nico cooperated with authorities, surrendering phones, message logs, and browser history. The sheer volume of deleted content spoke to the lengths Chris had gone to hide his intentions. Investigators meticulously tracked Chris's movements. GPS data confirmed his route to the oil site where he disposed of the bodies. Drone footage revealed disturbed earth near the tanks. When the search teams recovered Shanann and Bella and Celeste, the chilling reality of the crime became undeniable. Chris's attempts to deceive failed at every turn. He failed a polygraph, contradicted himself in interviews, and wavered under forensic scrutiny. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, the mask slipped, revealing a man capable of horrors that defied comprehension. Yet even then, a full confession remained elusive, leaving law enforcement to unravel the meticulous planning and shocking execution that had claimed an entire family. The investigation was a race against time, and with each new discovery, the true scale of Chris Watts' crime became impossible to ignore. The evidence, painstakingly gathered, would eventually lead to the confession, the trial, and the justice that followed. But the haunting echoes of what he had done would linger forever. The courtroom was heavy with anticipation when Chris Watts finally faced the consequences of his actions. The trial, though anticipated by a grieving community, became a national spectacle, broadcast and dissected by news outlets across the country. Every detail, every nuance, every testimony peeled back the layers of a life once perceived as ordinary, revealing the depth of manipulation, betrayal, and cold-blooded murder. Chris, the man who had once played the role of devoted husband and father, now sat at the center of the room, a figure stripped of pretense. Prosecutors presented the evidence meticulously, tracing his actions from the first sinister conversations with Nico Kessinger to the tragic murders of Shanann and Bella and Celeste. Every text, every GPS ping, every deleted digital trace became a piece of the damning puzzle. Witnesses recounted moments that now seemed horrifyingly prescient. Friends noting his obsessive behavior, coworkers noticing unusual tension, neighbors recalling strange patterns in his comings and goings. Experts spoke of his psychological profile, detailing traits of manipulation, control, and narcissism. They painted a portrait of a man who meticulously planned his actions, who had rehearsed every lie, and who had enacted a chillingly calculated betrayal. During the proceedings, Chris Watts' demeanor oscillated between feigned remorse and defensive denial. Yet, the mountain of evidence left no room for doubt. Forensic reports, crime scene photographs, and surveillance footage were presented one by one, each reinforcing the undeniable reality of his actions. The jury, the public, and the victims' families were confronted with the horrifying truth. The man they trusted had destroyed his own family. Ultimately, the legal system moved decisively. Chris Watts accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty, a decision that would spare him but also secure life without parole. On November 19, 2018, he was sentenced in a ceremony that was both solemn and surreal. Life without the possibility of parole meant he would spend his remaining years confined, a stark reminder of the magnitude of his crimes. The sentencing, though legally conclusive, could not mend the shattered lives left in the wake of his actions. Shanann, Bella, and Celeste's absence became a permanent void. The courtroom's silence, punctuated only by the judge's firm declarations, echoed the grief, anger, and disbelief of a community that had borne witness to unimaginable tragedy. Outside the courtroom, loved ones grappled with a range of emotions. Relief that justice had been served mingled with a haunting emptiness. Friends, family, and neighbors struggled to reconcile the memory of the Watts family before the tragedy with the nightmarish reality that followed. The legal closure, though critical, could never replace what had been lost. The trial became a case study in deception, control, and the horrifying potential hidden behind the facade of normalcy. It was a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, that the most dangerous predators can hide in plain sight, and that justice, though inevitable, cannot erase the scars of loss. The aftermath of Chris Watts' crimes rippled far beyond the walls of the courtroom. Grief settled over the Watts family's friends, neighbors, and the broader community like a heavy fog, impossible to shake. For those who knew Sean and Bella and Celeste, the tragedy was deeply personal. For strangers, it was a chilling reminder of how fragile life and trust can be. Shanann's parents, overwhelmed by heartbreak, struggled to reconcile the image of their vibrant daughter with the horror of her final moments. Friends described her as radiant, driven, and deeply devoted to her children. Every memory of laughter, family celebrations, and quiet evenings at home was now permanently shadowed by betrayal. Bella's laughter and Celeste's innocent curiosity became echoes in a house that would never again feel alive. Community members shared stories of Shanann's generosity, her efforts to mentor young women, and her unwavering optimism. The realization that someone so devoted could be destroyed by a person she trusted shook people to their core. Vigils were held, social media memorials proliferated, and the public mourned collectively. Candles flickered in the night, a quiet tribute to lives stolen too soon. For Chris Watts' own relatives, the impact was equally devastating but of a different kind. Shock, denial, and disbelief wrestled with grief. Many could not comprehend how a husband and father they had known could commit such atrocities. Questions of why and how haunted them daily, a torment compounded by media coverage and public scrutiny. Counselors and psychologists in the community described a trauma that would leave permanent scars. Parents became hypervigilant with their own children. Families reconsidered whom they trusted, and the narrative of suburban safety was forever altered. Every school pickup, every neighborhood gathering, carried the weight of what had been lost in Frederick, Colorado. The tragedy became a cautionary tale, a reminder that evil often hides behind ordinary facades. Yet even in the shadow of horror, small acts of solidarity emerged. Strangers offered support to grieving families, local organizations initiated awareness campaigns about domestic violence and warning signs, and survivors of abuse found courage in the story, learning that silence can sometimes be deadly. In the quiet corners of the community, questions lingered. How could someone so ordinary commit something so monstrous? Were there warning signs that could have been heeded? And as the Watts family moved forward in memory, could justice ever truly bring peace to those left behind? These questions remained unanswered, haunting the hearts and minds of all who heard the story. If this story left you shaken, make sure you don't miss the next episode where we uncover more hidden truths behind the Watts case. Click like, share this video with someone who loves true crime, subscribe to Shadow of Deceit, and turn on notifications so you never miss a chilling revelation. The darkness is closer than you think, and we'll explore it together, one story at a time.